Okay, so today we're gonna dive into something that I think is uh, pretty relevant to a lot of folks out there,
Mm,
especially if you're, involved with websites in any way.
yeah,
And this is a malware campaign that's been going on for a while.
right.
It's called DollyWay.
Yeah, DollyWay. It's been around for quite some time, actually.
Yeah, like since 2016.
Mm.
So we're talking almost a decade.
That's a long time in this world.
Yeah, that's a long time for something like this to be so persistent.
Yeah,
And it's affected a lot of
yeah,
websites
any number,
globally, over 20,000.
at least by some counts.
Yeah, and who knows how many more that haven't been detected yet.
Yeah, exactly. So,
This could
um,
be the tip of the iceberg.
yeah. So today we're gonna kind of take a look at how this thing has evolved over time,
Right.
how it works,
Mm-hmm.
and the implications for, anyone who runs a website or even just visits websites.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to do it in a way that's not super technical. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get too bogged down in the weeds.
Mm.
Yeah, we want to keep it accessible to everyone
Right, exactly.
so you can understand what's going on and why it matters.
Yeah, so the big picture is that this DollyWay campaign is basically a way for attackers to make money by redirecting traffic from compromised websites to scam websites.
Yeah, essentially hijacking those websites and their visitors.
Right, and they're doing it in a very clever way.
Oh, absolutely. Very sophisticated.
Yeah, so before we get into the details of how it works,
Okay.
let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
Sure.
This deep dive is brought to you in part by Stonefly, a leader in enterprise storage backup and disaster recovery AI storage and cloud solutions.
They offer some great solutions for keeping your data safe.
Yeah, absolutely, especially if you're worried about things like ransomware.
Right.
Stonefly offers something called air-gapped and immutable storage,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically a way to make sure that your data is completely isolated from any potential attacks.
Yeah, so even if your network is compromised, your data is still safe.
Exactly. So if you're interested in learning more about Stonefly's solutions, you can contact their team at sales@stonefly.com to schedule a demo.
Great. So now let's get back to DollyWay.
Right. So as we mentioned, this thing has been around since 2016,
Mm-hmm.
and it's evolved quite a bit over the years.
Yeah, it's definitely not static.
So in the early days, it was actually used to spread some pretty serious threats.
Yeah, we're talking ransomware,
Oh, wow.
which can lock up your entire website
Yeah.
and hold it hostage until you pay up.
Yeah. That's scary stuff.
It is. And they were also spreading banking Trojans
Oh, man.
designed to steal your financial information.
So this was like a full-on cybercrime operation.
Yeah, very much so.
Wow. And so now it's kind of shifted to more of a focus on scam websites.
Right. It seems that way.
So things like fake dating sites,
Mm.
gambling sites,
Yeah.
crypto
All
scams.
sorts of shady stuff.
Yeah. But even though it's not as directly damaging as ransomware,
Sure.
the scale of it is still huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Like we're talking millions of fraudulent impressions every month.
Yeah. As of February 2025, they were generating 10 million a month.
10 million. That's insane.
It's a staggering number.
Yeah. And that's just the ones they know about.
Exactly. Who knows how many more are flying under the radar?
Yeah. It's pretty scary to think about.
It is.
So let's talk about how this thing actually works.
Okay.
Like, how do these websites get infected in the first place?
Right. So the most common entry point seems to be through vulnerabilities in WordPress plugins and themes.
Okay, so those are like the add-ons that people use to customize their websites.
Exactly. They add functionality and features.
Right, and so
Oh.
sometimes these plugins and themes have security weaknesses.
Yeah. Known as end-day vulnerabilities.
Okay, and so the attackers exploit these vulnerabilities.
Right. They use a technique called script injection.
Okay, and what does that mean?
Basically, they insert malicious code into the website's code.
Oh, so they're like slipping their own instructions in there.
Yeah, kind of like planting a backdoor.
Yeah, that's sneaky.
It is, and they often use a specific WordPress function called script to do this.
Okay, so that's how they get in.
Yeah, that's the initial foothold.
But then what happens?
So this injected script, it's actually just the first stage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's designed to be small and inconspicuous.
Okay, so it's not like a big, obvious thing?
No, it's meant to blend in.
Okay, so what's its purpose?
Its main job is to load a second script.
Okay, another script, so it's like a chain reaction.
Exactly, and this second script is actually hosted on the same compromised website.
Oh, wow. So they're using the website's own resources against it?
Yeah, the clever way to hide in plain sight.
Right, because if they were hosting it somewhere else, it might be easier to detect.
Exactly, they're trying to stay under the radar.
Okay, so what does this second script do?
It has a couple of key functions.
Okay.
First, it gathers information about the visitor's refer.
Okay, so like where they came from before landing on the infected website?
Exactly. So they can track traffic sources. And more importantly, it then loads what's called a traffic direction system script.
Okay, a traffic direction system, what is that?
It's basically a piece of code that acts like a traffic controller.
Okay, I see.
It analyzes various characteristics of the website visitor.
Like what?
Things like their location, the type of device they're using, like desktop or mobile, and that refer information we just talked about.
Okay.
And based on this information, the TDS decides whether or not to redirect the visitor to one of those scam websites.
So it's like a filter?
Yeah, exactly. It's filtering traffic and deciding who to target.
Okay, that makes sense. So not everyone who visits an infected website gets redirected.
No, only those who meet specific criteria.
Okay, so what are those criteria?
Well, first, they have to be a direct visitor.
Okay, so they typed in the website address directly or used a bookmark.
Exactly. They didn't come from another website.
Okay.
And second, they must not be identified as a bot.
Okay, like a search engine crawler.
Right, or a security scanner. They actually have a hard-coded list of 102 different bot user agents that they filter out.
Wow, so they're really trying to avoid detection by those automated systems.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and what's the third criterion?
The visitor must not be logged into WordPress.
Okay, so not even an administrator.
Nope, not even an admin.
So if you're logged in, you're safe.
Well, safer at least.
Okay, so basically if you just stumble upon an infected website and you're not a bot and you're not logged in,
right,
that's when you're most likely to get redirected.
Yeah, that's their target audience.
Okay, so it's very targeted and very sneaky.
Very much so.
So what happens once the TDS decides to redirect someone?
Well, it's not immediate.
Oh, really?
There's actually another step involved.
Another step? This is getting complicated.
It is a bit, but it's important to understand the layers.
Okay. I'm all ears.
So the third stage involves randomly selecting 3 other WordPress websites that are also infected with DollyWay.
3 other websites. So it's like a network of infected sites.
Exactly. They're all connected. And these 3 sites act as TDS nodes.
TDS nodes, okay.
And the visitor's browser then loads a small piece of JavaScript code from one of these nodes.
Okay, so it's like a relay race.
Yeah, kind of the final handoff.
Okay, and this final piece of JavaScript is what actually does the redirect.
Right. It sends the visitor to the scam website.
Okay, so it's like a 3-step process.
Yep. Very roundabout, but effective.
Yeah, and I guess that makes it even harder to track down.
Absolutely. It obscures the origin of the redirect.
Right, because it's coming from a different website than the one you initially visited.
Exactly. They're trying to cover their tracks.
Okay, so we've talked about how they get in and how they redirect traffic. But what about the money? Like, how do they actually make money from this?
Right. So they use affiliate marketing.
Affiliate marketing, so they get paid for sending traffic to these scam websites?
Exactly. They're like middlemen.
Okay, I see.
So they embed special tracking codes called affiliate parameters into the redirection links.
Okay, so when someone clicks on the link and ends up on the scam website?
Right. The attackers get credited for that referral.
Yeah, and they get a commission if the visitor signs up for something or makes a purchase.
Oh, so it's like a pay-per-click scheme?
Yeah, essentially, but for scams.
Wow. So these infected WordPress websites are unknowingly part of this massive scam operation.
Yeah, they're being exploited.
That's crazy.
It is, and it's very lucrative for the attackers.
Yeah, I bet. So they're making money hand over fist.
Quite possibly.
So we've talked about how they get in, how they redirect traffic, how they make money. But what about getting rid of it? Like, how do you clean up an infected website?
Right, so that's the tricky part.
Okay, why is that?
Well, DollyWay is designed to be very persistent.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means it automatically reinfects the website every time a page is loaded.
Every time a page is loaded.
Oh, wow. So even if you manage to remove some of the malicious code,
okay,
it'll just come back.
Oh, man. So it's like a hydra.
Yeah, you cut off one head and 2 more grow back.
That sounds like a nightmare. It can be very frustrating for website owners.
Yeah, I bet. So how does it manage to reinfect itself like that?
Well, one way is by injecting its code into all the active plugins on the website.
Okay, so it's not just in one place, it's spread out.
Exactly. It's embedded throughout the website's functionality.
Wow, so that makes it much harder to find and remove.
Very much so. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, and I also read something about the WP Code plugin.
Right. So WP Code is a legitimate plugin that allows website owners to add snippets of code to their site.
Okay, so it's like a convenience tool?
Yeah, it makes it easier to manage code.
Okay.
But DollyWay actually installs its own copy of WP Code.
Oh, wow. So they're using a legitimate tool for malicious purposes.
Exactly. They're hijacking it.
Okay, and this rogue copy of WP Code contains the malicious DollyWay code.
Right. It's hidden in plain sight.
And is this something that a website owner would easily notice?
No, not at all.
Why not?
Because DollyWay also hides this rogue copy of WP code from the list of plugins in the WordPress admin dashboard.
Oh, wow. So it's completely hidden.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know it's there unless you went digging into the website's files.
That's pretty sneaky.
It is. They're trying to be as stealthy as possible.
Okay. And it gets even worse, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because they also create hidden administrator accounts.
Right.
So even if you manage to clean up the website, they can still get back in.
Yeah, they have a backdoor.
Wow. So these hidden admin accounts are like a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, they're a major security risk.
So how do you even find these accounts?
Well, they're given random 32-character hexadecimal names.
Oh, man. So they're like impossible to spot.
Pretty much, unless you're looking for them specifically.
And most website owners probably wouldn't even know to look.
Right, exactly.
So it's a very sophisticated and a very persistent threat.
Yeah, it's a tough one to deal with.
Absolutely. And speaking of tough threats, we want to remind you that staying ahead of things like DollyWay requires robust security measures.
Absolutely.
And our sponsor, Stonefly, is a leader in enterprise storage backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions.
Right. They offer some great options for protecting your data.
Yeah, if you're concerned about the security of your data and you want to explore ransomware-proof options, Stonefly offers something called air-gapped and immutable storage.
Yeah, that's a really good way to keep your data safe.
Yeah, it's basically like an impenetrable vault for your data.
Yeah, very secure.
So if you're interested in learning more about Stonefly solutions, you can reach out to their team at sales@stonefly.com for a personalized demo.
Great.
Okay, so to sum up this deep dive into DollyWay, what are the key takeaways?
Well, the main thing is that DollyWay is a long-standing and very sophisticated malware campaign.
Right.
It's been targeting WordPress websites since 2016.
Yeah.
And while the current version is mostly focused on redirecting traffic to scam websites, it has a history of spreading much more serious threats like ransomware and banking Trojans.
Yeah, we talked about that.
So it's definitely something to be aware of.
Absolutely.
And it uses multiple layers of stealth to avoid detection.
Right. It's like a ghost.
Yeah, it's very good at hiding.
So it only targets specific types of visitors for redirection. It hides its malicious code within plugins.
Right.
And it even creates hidden administrator accounts.
Yeah, it's very thorough.
And on top of all that, it automatically reinfects websites every time a page is loaded.
Yeah, it's a tough nut to crack.
So basically, it's a very persistent and very difficult threat to deal with.
Yeah, it's not something to take lightly.
No, definitely not. And it just goes to show that basic security measures might not be enough.
Right.
Like keeping WordPress and your plugins up to date. That's important, but it's not a silver bullet.
No, it's not.
So what else can people do to protect themselves against these kinds of threats?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, like what proactive steps can individuals and organizations take to make sure that their online presence is truly secure? Because this DollyWay campaign is just one example of the many sophisticated threats that are out there.
Right. The threat landscape is constantly evolving.
Exactly. So we need to be thinking beyond just the basics.
Absolutely. We need to be proactive and vigilant.
Yeah, and we need to stay informed.
Definitely knowledge is power in this world.
So I guess that's something for our listeners to ponder. Like, what can you do to step up your security game?
Yeah. What additional measures can you put in place
to protect yourself against these kinds of advanced attacks?
It's a good question to ask yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a question that's only going to become more important.
Absolutely, as the threats become more sophisticated.
Right. So stay safe out there, folks.
And stay informed.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Take care.
Hi.